Listen to that.
Is that a ticking clock?
It is. I mean, metaphorically, but also very literally, because right now, as we sit here, it is Tuesday, May 5, 2026.
Right.
And in exactly 6 days, on May 11, the governing body of world football requires a piece of paper from the Argentine national team.
Just a standard administrative form, really.
Exactly, a formality. It's the preliminary 55-man squad for the 2026 World Cup, which is happening, right here in the USA, Canada, and Mexico.
Yeah.
But the reason that ticking clock is so incredibly loud right now is because of one guy, Lionel Messi.
The guy who basically owns the sport.
Right, a guy who literally lives in the host country, who lifted the trophy in 2022, and who is currently casually ghosting the entire planet regarding his participation.
It is, honestly, a phenomenal psychological hold over an entire industry.
It really is.
I mean, he is existing in this totally unprecedented state of limbo.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at a situation where the most famous athlete on earth is forcing a global staring contest, and the entire footballing calendar is practically suspended in animation waiting for him to blink.
It's like Schrodinger's goat.
Schrodinger's goat, yes.
Right, because until we hit that May 11 deadline, Lionel Messi is simultaneously playing and not playing in the World Cup.
Mathematically, he is in both states.
And it is completely breaking the brains of everyone involved. I mean, you've got tacticians in Buenos Aires trying to draw up formations for their group stage matches.
This is impossible.
It's totally impossible. And you have odds makers in Vegas losing their minds because you cannot accurately price a tournament's economic impact or its betting lines when the main character might just decide to stay home in Florida.
Well, and that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Exactly. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at a comprehensive, heavily verified research dossier that tracks exactly how this situation happened.
And it's a massive dossier.
Massive. We've got the data, we've got insider reports, and we have Messi's own words. The mission for today, for you listening, is to unpack how a 38-year-old with 900 career goals is holding everyone in absolute suspense.
They really need to figure out the physiological, the tactical, and the historical mechanics of this hesitation.
Because the stakes here aren't just about, one roster spot.
No.
It's about the brutal tension between a legendary athlete's physical reality, his own competitive addiction, and, frankly, the crushing expectations of an entire planet.
Yeah, and the physical reality is really the only metric he is actually listening to right now.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To understand the hesitation, you have to strip away the aura, right? Strip away the 8 Ballon d'Ors and look at the biological mechanics of a 38-year-old body trying to survive a summer tournament.
Which is tough.
It's incredibly tough. And the paradox in our source material is just glaring.
Mm-hmm.
Because on one hand, you have his output in 2025.
Oh, the MLS stats.
Right. He won his second consecutive MLS MVP.
Yeah.
He won the Golden Boot. The raw numbers are 29 goals and 19 assists in 28 games.
Which is just absurd.
He led the league in both categories.
I look at those numbers, and I just see a guy playing on an easier difficulty setting. Like, it looks like a video game cheat code.
It does.
But wait, I have a fundamental issue with taking those numbers purely at face value.
Okay, what's the issue?
Well, if you are operating at more than a goal contribution per game, right?
Yeah.
If you are breaking Ferenc Puskas' all-time cross-competition assist record during the 2025 MLS playoffs.
Which, by the way, is a record that stood for generations.
Exactly. And you just scored your 900th career goal, which happened just weeks ago against Nashville SC on March 18 of this year.
Right, just incredible timing.
Right. So if all that is happening, why is there any hesitation at all?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, if you are dominating that thoroughly, why on earth did he tell Bean on Sports in November 2025, and I quote, "I don't want to be a burden"?
Yeah, the burden quote.
It feels like false modesty. You don't score 29 goals in 28 games and act like a burden.
See, I don't think it's false modesty at all.
Really?
No, I think it is highly calculated self-awareness. When Messi uses the word burden, he is signaling a really deep understanding of modern tactical geometry.
Okay, break that down for me.
So at 38, his offensive output might be astronomically high, right? The goals and assists are there.
Yeah, clearly.
But his defensive work rate, like his presses per 90 minutes, his off-the-ball tracking, it is virtually zero.
Okay, he's essentially walking when he doesn't have the ball.
Exactly.
Oh.
And he knows that in a World Cup knockout game against an elite team, Carrying a player who does not defend forces the other 10 players to just run themselves into the ground to maintain their defensive shape.
Right, they have to compensate.
Heavily. And he is entirely secure in his legacy. He has the 2022 World Cup.
He already completed football.
Basically, yeah. He has the Copa Americas. He does not want to show up to the USA, Canada, and Mexico as some sort of symbolic mascot.
Like a ceremonial send-off.
Right. He will only go if his physical capacity allows him to actually justify the tactical imbalance he inherently creates by being on the pitch.
So if I'm understanding this right, the incredible output in MLS is sort of masking the underlying physical degradation.
Precisely. And the warning lights on his dashboard are definitely flashing red.
The dossier mentions the February scare.
Yes, the February 2026 preseason match against Barcelona SC.
Right.
He suffered a left hamstring strain and had to be subbed off at 58 minutes.
Which is never a good sign.
No. And this wasn't an isolated tweak.
Right.
The dossier specifically flags that a very similar hamstring issue cost him 4 games in the summer of 2025.
Oh, wow.
This is just the physiological reality of athletic aging.
Let's talk about the sports science of that for a second, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, let's do it.
A hamstring strain for a 25-year-old is, what, a 3-week annoyance?
Pretty much. Some ice, some rest, you're back.
Right. But for a guy turning 39 during the group stage of the World Cup, because his birthday is June 24th, right in the middle of it all, a soft tissue injury is a completely different beast, isn't it?
Oh, it changes the entire recovery protocol.
How so?
Well, as an athlete ages, the elasticity of the fascia decreases.
Okay.
The fast-twitch muscle fibers, which are heavily concentrated in the hamstrings and are basically entirely responsible for his signature acceleration.
That sudden burst of speed.
Right, and the certain deceleration, too. Those fibers take significantly longer to repair.
Because the body just isn't bouncing back.
Exactly. The lactic acid clearance in his muscles is just slower.
Yeah.
So when he says in his December 2025 ESPN interview that he is taking it, quote, day by day, and assessing if he feels realistic and good, he means it completely literally.
That is the surreal part of this entire deep dive for me.
Why is that?
You have the fate of a global sporting mega event hinging on a morning bodily assessment in Fort Lauderdale.
It's crazy to think about.
He literally wakes up, does some stretches on a yoga mat, gauges the micro tears in his left hamstring, and that dictates global sports news.
It is hyper-pragmatic.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I want to push back on the idea that the body is the ultimate enemy here.
Oh.
Yeah, because if you look at the dossier, the environment he's playing in right now, the MLS might actually be the greatest logistical advantage any 38-year-old has ever had going into a World Cup.
Oh, the MLS calendar wildcard.
Exactly. The dossier outlines this MLS calendar wildcard, and the physiological implications seem massive.
You know, the calendar advantage is arguably the only reason he is even in contention for this squad right now.
Really? The only reason?
I believe so. Consider the periodization of global football. The European season runs from August to May.
Right, a long grind.
By the time a traditional summer World Cup arrives in June, players from the Premier League or La Liga are in the exhaustion phase of their physical macrocycle.
Because they've played, what, 50 to 60 high-intensity matches?
Easily. Their central nervous systems are just fried. They're carrying micro-injuries.
I always think of their nervous systems like a rubber band.
That's a good analogy.
If you play for Real Madrid or Manchester City, that rubber band has been stretched to its absolute snapping point for 10 straight months.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to June, the band has no snap left. It was completely slack.
It's totally worn out.
But because the MLS season runs from February to November, Messi's rubber band has only been stretched for 4 months.
That is the exact physiological contrast. Messi's preseason began in January 2026.
Okay.
The World Cup begins in June, which aligns perfectly with the mid-season point of Major League Soccer.
So he's peaking.
Exactly. He is arriving at this tournament in his absolute physical prime for the year. And he explicitly noted this in the ESPN interview.
What do you say?
He compared his current trajectory to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar.
Oh, right, because Qatar was in the winter.
Right, Qatar was a total anomaly. It was played in November and December, right in the middle of the European season.
So everyone arrived relatively fresh.
Exactly. Players arrived with fresh legs rather than postseason fatigue. He stated that his physical state arriving at this 2026 World Cup will mimic that mid-season freshness he had in Qatar.
Which is a huge advantage. But hold on, I have a thought here.
Go for it.
Freshness is great, obviously, but we have to talk about neural priming.
Good neural priming.
I just don't buy the idea that MLS freshness seamlessly translates to World Cup dominance? Because the intensity gap is basically a canyon.
That is a very fair point.
I mean, does the lower intensity of MLS mean his central nervous system will completely lack the match sharpness required when he suddenly finds himself isolated against an elite French or English center back?
The game speed is definitely different.
You can't just flip a switch from jogging against the Chicago Fire in May to surviving a tactical bloodbath against a top-tier European defense in June.
Right, you can't. And that is the ultimate tension point. Guillermo Hoyos, the Inter Miami coach who replaced Javier Mascherano earlier this year, he sees this daily.
And what does he think?
Well, Hoyos is cautiously optimistic. He noted in the dossier, and I quote, "I hope so, God willing. The way he plays is pure magic."
God willing is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that quote.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because you cannot rely on magic to bridge a gap in neurological processing speed.
Exactly.
When you play in a slightly slower league, your brain adjusts its processing time to the speed of the incoming defenders.
You get used to the extra half second.
Right. And if an elite European defender closes that space half a second faster than an MLS defender, that neural delay results in a turnover.
And at the World Cup, a turnover can be fatal.
Messi knows this. It is the absolute core of his match sharpness concern. However, what he lacks in weekly high-intensity conditioning, he makes up for in unprecedented geographical and environmental comfort.
Ah, the home advantage.
Yes.
And it is incredibly ironic, isn't it? The World Cup is hosted by the USA, Canada, and Mexico.
And Messi lives in Florida.
Right. And if you look at the logistical data in the dossier for Argentina's Group J schedule, the stars have aligned to an almost comical degree.
It's honestly unbelievable. Argentina is scheduled to play Algeria on June 17 in Kansas City.
Okay.
Then they play Austria and Jordan in Dallas, specifically Arlington, Texas.
So wait, these are all domestic flights for him?
Exactly. These are cities he visits regularly on domestic flights with Inter Miami.
He doesn't have to cross the Atlantic.
Nope.
He doesn't have to adjust his circadian rhythm by 6 or 7 hours. He stays on roughly the same time zone.
And the marginal gains there are astronomical for a player managing cellular aging.
I can imagine. I mean, a 38-year-old body does not recover on a 12-hour transatlantic flight the way a 22-year-old body does.
Not even close. You swell up, your joints get stiff.
Right, but by staying domestic, sleeping in familiar climates, and playing in stadiums where he literally already knows the turf and the locker rooms,
he is conserving an immense amount of cognitive and physical energy.
the environmental friction is essentially zero.
It really is. It is the closest to a home World Cup outside of Buenos Aires he could possibly ask for.
That's wild to think about.
And to underscore the absolute surrealism of his environment right now, the dossier highlights a phenomenal detail from March 2026.
Oh, the stadium naming.
Yes, Inter Miami opened their new stadium, and they literally named the East Stand the Leo Messi Stand.
While he is actively on the roster,
Yes.
he is clocking into work at a building that has a wing named after him.
It's unparalleled. The club put out a statement. Recognizing someone is not always about closing a chapter. Sometimes it is about realizing you are witnessing something unique.
The guy is a living, breathing monument.
He is. But, and this is the crux of part 3 of our deep dive, a living monument presents a massive tactical headache for a manager.
Oh, absolutely. Which brings us to Lionel Scaloni, the mastermind behind Argentina's current golden era.
Scaloni's job right now borders on the impossible.
Let's contextualize Scaloni's stakes for a minute, because they are historic on their own.
Very much so.
He won the 2022 World Cup, he won the Copa America in 2021, and he backed it up again in 2024.
Incredible run.
If he wins in 2026, he becomes the first manager since Vittorio Pozzo with Italy in 1934 and 1938 to win multiple World Cups.
That is a 90-year-old record.
90 years. But to do it, he has to design a tactical system for a ghost.
A ghost who might only play half a game.
Right. How do you build a pressing structure or a transition game when your primary creator is taking it day by day?
Well, you build a machine that can operate with or without the ghost.
A plug-and-play system.
Exactly. And Scaloni's public signaling has been incredibly revealing on this front.
What's he been saying?
On March 27, he told the press, "I will do everything I can to make sure he is there. For the sake of football, he has to be there."
For the sake of football, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. We also have the verified report from Leandro Contento in La Nación confirming Messi will absolutely be on that May 11 preliminary 55-man list.
So bureaucratically, he is in.
Bureaucratically, yes.
And the private whispers are even louder, right?
Oh, much louder. Claudio Gunali, a former Argentina assistant, had a private sit-down with Messi at the AFA training complex in Buenos Aires.
This was during the March friendlies, right? Against Mauritania and Zambia.
That's right. So Gunali goes on Radio Goal in April and outright says, "There's no doubt he will be at the World Cup. I felt it and I saw him in great shape."
Even Javier Mascherano gave a cheeky yes, why not, back in February when asked about it.
Exactly. The inner circle is projecting extreme confidence. But putting him on the plane is the easy part. The actual footballing problem is integrating him into the pitch geometry.
Because of the walking.
Right. Scaloni has hinted heavily at accommodation, floating the idea of utilizing Messi in whatever role fits or makes sense.
Which is manager code for a rotational role.
100%. We're likely looking at the reality of Messi as a 60-minute player or an elite impact substitute.
Coming off the bench in the 70th minute when the other team's legs are gone.
Exactly. But to survive that, whether he starts and comes off or comes off the bench, the supporting cast has to be flawless.
Let's analyze that tactical blueprint because this is where the deep dive gets really nerdy, which I love.
My favorite part.
If you are playing a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2, and your right-sided forward, or your number 10, is essentially stationary out of possession,
which he is,
you are defending with 10 men against 11.
Yep.
And against a top team with an overlapping fullback, you are mathematically doomed unless someone else covers that geographical space.
Exactly. The mathematics of modern pressing do not forgive a stationary player.
Yeah.
You just get overrun.
So who covers the gap?
This is why Julian Alvarez is the single most important tactical piece for Argentina right now.
Alvarez, who's currently at Atletico Madrid.
Right. He is the kinetic counterweight to Messi's static positioning. His presses per 90 minutes are elite.
He just doesn't stop running.
Never. And he curves his pressing runs to create shadow cover, essentially blocking the passing lanes that Messi leaves open.
So he's funneling the play.
Yes. Alvarez becomes the first line of defense, doing the running of two men to maintain the high block.
He is basically the physical battery for the forward line.
That's a great way to put it.
But he can't do it alone,
Right.
right? Especially with the injury watch on Lautaro Martinez.
Right. The dossier notes Lautaro has lingering concerns.
And if Lautaro's minutes are limited, the offensive burden shifts drastically back to Alvarez and consequently back to Messi.
Which necessitates absolute control in the midfield.
Because you can't just be in a track meet.
Exactly. If you cannot press high efficiently because you're hiding a 38-year-old, you have to dominate the ball so the opponent simply cannot attack you.
Keep the ball, keep control.
That is where Rodrigo de Paul and Alexis McAllister dictate the terms of engagement.
Let's talk about De Paul first.
De Paul is the spatial enforcer. He covers the right half space defensively, acting as the bodyguard for that side of the pitch where Messi operates.
He's the box-to-box engine.
He does all the dirty work.
And then McAllister provides the pausa, right?
It's the pausa.
He is the guy at Liverpool who slows the game down, dictates the tempo, and brings just elite composure.
He rarely loses possession.
So if things get chaotic, McAllister puts his foot on the ball and lowers the heart rate of the entire team.
Which is exactly what you need if your primary creator is sitting on the bench for the first 60 minutes.
You just need to keep the game at 0-0 until a magic man comes on.
Right. But you also need an injection of unpredictability, which brings us to Franco Mastantuono.
Oh, the teenager.
An 18-year-old wild card out of Real Madrid.
Including him in the squad represents Scaloni kind of bridging two eras, doesn't it?
It really does. You have a teenager who literally grew up idolizing Messi, now competing for minutes to essentially act as his legs in the late stages of a match.
That's poetic. And anchoring all of this, let's not forget, is Emiliano Dibu Martinez in goal.
Dibu is a massive, massive psychological advantage.
You know, if a knockout game goes to 120 minutes and hits penalties, you have the most intimidating goalkeeper on the planet.
He lives for the mind games.
He really does. But Argentina is going to need every ounce of that psychological armor because, according to the dossier, the squad is a bit fractured right now.
The injury list is severe.
Who are we missing?
Giovanni Lo Celso has a torn quadriceps.
Ouch.
Valentin Carboni is dealing with a major knee injury. Juan Foyth has a ruptured Achilles.
That's three key depth pieces right there.
But the most glaring tactical void is the official retirement of Angel Di Maria.
Okay, yes, this cannot be overstated. We have to talk about Di Maria.
He wasn't just a great player. He was the tactical skeleton key for Messi.
Exactly. Because whenever teams would inevitably double or triple team Messi on the right, Di Maria was the outlet on the opposite flank.
He was the guy making the devastating diagonal runs behind the defense.
He scored in the Copa America final. He scored in the World Cup final.
He always showed up in the biggest moments.
So without Di Maria, who is punishing the defense for overcommitting to Messi,
It changes the entire spatial dynamics of their attack. Scaloni has to invent a totally new method of stretching the pitch laterally.
and Messi knows this.
Oh, absolutely.
The dossier points out he already ruled himself out of the Finalissima against Spain.
Which ultimately got canceled anyway.
Right, but the fact that he was proactively skipping non-essential international duties shows he is rigorously managing his load.
He knows the tactical burden is heavier without Di Maria there to relieve the pressure.
All right, so we've broken down the biology, the calendar, the geography, and the really intricate tactical geometry Scaloni is trying to solve.
There's a lot of moving parts.
It is. So let's look at the macro perspective for part 4.
Okay, zooming out.
What does the quantum Messi problem do to the global footballing economy, specifically the odds makers?
It induces total algorithmic panic.
I love that phrase, algorithmic panic.
It's true. Let's look at the quantitative value of Messi's existence. BetMGM has Argentina priced at plus 800 to win the 2026 World Cup.
Okay, so that translates to an 8-to-1 payout, keeping them among the favorites.
Right. But the odds makers have openly admitted a staggering reality. If Messi officially confirms he is out, those odds will get significantly worse. The payout will rise because their mathematical probability of winning drops.
Think about the gravity of that for a second.
It's huge.
The sports betting market uses incredibly complex Poisson distribution models and expected goal supremacies to set these lines.
Highly sophisticated math.
And the mere fact that a 38-year-old with a bad hamstring might be on a roster is mathematically propping up the title odds of an entire nation.
Yep.
He is a quantifiable financial metric holding the betting line together.
Because his statistical impact, even in 30-minute cameos, skews the expected goals data so drastically that the algorithms simply cannot ignore him.
Wow.
And it isn't just financial metrics on the line, it is historical immortality.
The 27th ticket.
Exactly. If Messi steps onto the pitch in Kansas City on June 17 against Algeria for a single second, he claims the 27th ticket.
The ultimate longevity record.
He currently holds the all-time record for World Cup appearances with 26.
And Lothar Matthäus is right behind him with 25 for Germany.
Right. So if Messi plays in 2026, he extends it to 27 appearances across 6 different World Cups.
6 World Cups.
In the modern high-intensity era of football, playing in 6 World Cups is essentially a biometric impossibility.
It's absurd. It is a record that may stand for a century.
And he is tethering that personal record to a national crusade.
Because they're trying to go back-to-back.
Yes. And Argentina just steamrolled the CONMEBOL qualifiers, which is a historically brutal gauntlet.
14 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses, right?
Correct. And Messi contributed 8 goals in that run. So they are actively chasing a back-to-back World Cup title, something only Italy in the 1930s and Pele's Brazil in 1958 and 1962 have ever achieved.
The narrative weight of that is just suffocating.
It's massive.
Which actually brings up the most fascinating psychological parallel in the entire dossier for me.
Oh, the Ronaldo parallel.
Yes, because we have Messi at 38, navigating MLS, pondering one final ride. And over in Saudi Arabia, Cristiano Ronaldo is 41, playing for Al Nassr, staring down the exact same existential deadline for Portugal.
It's amazing that they are both going through this at the same time.
We are watching the 2 defining titans of the last 2 decades, both operating in leagues outside the European elite, both managing declining physical output, attempting to engineer one final internet-breaking collision on the global stage.
It is the definitive last dance psychological profiling.
But their approaches to aging are diametrically opposed, aren't they?
Completely opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Ronaldo's late career is defined by an absolute obsession with physical maintenance and volume, right? He's trying to outwork time.
Hitting the gym, maintaining peak muscle mass.
Exactly. Whereas Messi's late career is defined by extreme technical economy.
Walking the pitch.
Walking the pitch, conserving energy, and relying on pure neural brilliance for 5 seconds at a time.
But both are fundamentally refusing to yield to the reality that the sport has physically passed them by.
They refuse to let go.
And frankly, I have to ask you, isn't it an enormous legacy risk for Messi?
I mean,
Well, he has the perfect ending. The 2022 final in Qatar is universally regarded as the greatest World Cup final ever played.
Oh, without a doubt.
He lifted the trophy, he completed football. Why risk going to North America, potentially looking slow, looking human, pulling a hamstring in the group stage, and watching his team get eliminated because he couldn't track back? Why not just ride off into the sunset with that gorgeous gold trophy?
Well, because the psychology of an elite competitor views riding off into the sunset as a form of surrender.
Surrender.
Yes. The fear of looking human is entirely eclipsed by the sickness of competition. For a player like Messi, the risk isn't failing to win in 2026.
It isn't.
No. The 2022 victory inoculated his legacy against any future failure. The true risk, the thing that keeps him up at night, is sitting on a couch in Florida, watching Argentina struggle in a quarterfinal, and knowing in his bones that he could have picked out a pass to save them.
Wow, the addiction to the arena is profound.
It is an addiction. That is why the day-by-day assessment isn't indecision. It is a calculated, desperate negotiation with his own mortality. He is trying to extract the final drop of magic from a body that is actively telling him to stop.
You do not score 900 professional goals by being comfortable sitting on a couch.
Exactly. The competitive drive doesn't age, even when the fascia does.
That is so well said. So let's tie this all together for the listener.
Let's do it.
We started with the ticking clock. May 11 is the deadline.
6 days away.
We examined the biological reality of a 38-year-old maintaining absurd MLS output while managing structural hamstring degradation.
The day-by-day struggle.
We broke down the unique nervous system advantages of the MLS calendar and the logistical brilliance of a domestic World Cup for him.
The Kansas City and Dallas flights.
Exactly. We looked at Scaloni's incredibly complex tactical geometry, using Alvarez's shadow pressing to hide a stationary genius.
Scaloni's masterpiece, potentially.
And we quantified his impact on the betting markets and his pursuit of that immortal 27th appearance.
It is a phenomenal intersection of sports science, tactical evolution, and human psychology. But looking at all of this data, I want to leave you with a thought that fundamentally challenges how we view athletes at the end of their life cycle.
Okay, let's hear it.
If Lionel Messi plays in 2026 and leads Argentina to victory, he completely shatters our understanding of the human athletic prime.
He rewrites the rulebook.
He proves that neural brilliance can mathematically overcome physical deterioration on the highest stage.
He beats time.
He beats time.
Uh-huh.
But if he chooses to sit out, if May 11 comes and he releases a statement saying, "My body cannot meet my standard and I refuse to compromise the team's tactical integrity,"
Which would be a shock.
it would. But if he does, he achieves something perhaps even more profound. He creates an entirely new blueprint for sporting immortality. We are so used to seeing legends drag themselves through mediocre final chapters because they cannot let go. If Messi walks away while still holding the golden boot, he proves that true greatness includes the power to gracefully surrender.
Wow.
So the ultimate question raised by this dossier isn't just about what he will do, it is about which legacy is actually more powerful. The God who fights time to the bitter end, or the God who has the supreme confidence to simply walk away.
The God who fights time or the God who walks away. That is an incredible frame for what we are about to witness over the next 6 days.
It's going to be historic either way.
Keep your eyes on the news feeds on May 11. Listen for the ticking. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive and have a fantastic rest of your day.